The company I'm going to analyze today is the number one player in the solar panels sector in the USA. I heard a lot of people talking about Enphase and Canadian Solar, but the number one player has been ignored a lot of times by many YouTubers, and that is First Solar. This sector is extremely interesting, and recently Elon Musk, the world's most powerful man probably, and Trump's right-hand man, posted this on X. Solar power will be the vast majority of power generation in the future. This could be extremely interesting because it seems to have a strong influence on Trump and on Trump's policy. Therefore, I thought it would be cool to find the most interesting solar panel company in the US, which is indeed First Solar. The stock is down around 35% from its highs, and right now it looks fairly undervalued. The stock right now is trading at a forward price earnings ratio of 10, which is extremely low for a company operating in a fast-growing sector. Before we deep dive into the company, we need to look at the sector because it's really hard to comprehend. It's a very complicated type of business where many factors have to be considered. But before we start, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're new. Thank you very much if you will. First of all, we have to say that the sector is totally dominated by Chinese companies. Worldwide, Chinese companies are totally dominating, but in the USA, First Solar has been able to keep a very high market share of around 30 to 35% in the solar panels market. Some data says that China now controls more than 80% of the global solar panel supply chain. Of course, Chinese competition is pushing down costs, which is a problem for European and American companies. And the worst part is that Chinese companies are getting financed by the government. The government really wants to push on solar energy. Therefore, they can even afford to be negative. This is what is pushing costs down. These Chinese companies don't care about making money in reality because they get financed by the Chinese government. And unfortunately, this is something European and American companies cannot afford to do. Solar panels from China in the US are subject to very high duties. But here comes one of the problems. Chinese companies have been able to create a supply chain made on purpose to go around these duties. So they are building companies in the US, which they use to assemble parts sent from the China. So they are not importing fully made solar panels, but they are importing only the raw materials, and then they are assembling everything in the USA, going around duties. Furthermore, Chinese companies have been able to use Biden's IRA to build manufacturing productions in the USA using American subsidies. This is pretty ridiculous, but it actually happened. So even the USA market, which is still the more protected from China, is getting attacked by Chinese companies which are dominating worldwide. Therefore, this market is gonna get more and more competitive, but perhaps Trump could help First Solar. Trump could perhaps impose some new and harder tariffs on Chinese companies, protecting American companies. But for now, the situation is fairly complicated, also because many Chinese companies are building production facilities in other parts, in other places in Asia, which are not subject to duties. But the USA government is starting to impose duties on almost every Southeast Asia country. So this is the market situation, very fragmented, very complicated, with a lot of competition, and a fight to lower prices, which is never a very good thing. This means that the market is fairly commoditized. But still, this is a very interesting sector, and the future potential is really huge. So now let's look into First Solar. First of all, we need to say that past results have been really hard to predict. As you can see, revenues have been going everywhere, up and down. But in 2023 and 2024, they have been doing very well, with improving margins. As you can see, gross margin growth has been impressive, and so has been EBIT margin growth, which in the last 12 months was 34.5%, a really impressive level. So the return ratios are getting better. In the last 12 months, return on capital was almost 16%, and as we just saw, all margins are getting better. The balance sheet is really good with 1.2 billion US dollars in cash and short-term investments and a very low level of debt. The company has more cash than debt. On the cash flow statement, what we need to say is that the company generates a good bunch of cash, but they need to spend a lot in capital expenditures. Of course, this is a asset-heavy company which needs to invest to grow its future results. Therefore, free cash flow has been negative in all the past few years. The company still hasn't started doing big buybacks, but in my opinion they could in future years if the balance sheet remains so good. The market is expected to grow heavily, and analysts are very optimistic about First Solar, probably a bit too much because they expect a GAAP EPS of 33 in 2028, which could mean that the stock could be at 330, having simply a 10 price-earnings ratio, which would be extremely low for this kind of numbers, and right now the stock is at 200. This is the current guidance for 2024. They expect revenues between 4.1 and 4.2 billion US dollars, and they expect an operating income between 1.4 and 1.5 billion US dollars, and they expect earnings per diluted share between 14 and 14.5. And as you can see, capital expenditures are still expected to be extremely high, at around 1.6 billion US dollars. So to wrap up this video, we have an undervalued stock, probably with a price-earnings ratio for the next 12 months of around 10, with a potential huge future development, or at least that's what the most powerful man in the world thinks. Elon Musk is very bullish on solar panels, on solar energy, therefore this company could be extremely interesting. Also because it's the #1 player in the USA. Let me know what you think about this company, please type a comment, and remember to leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're new. See you next time, bye!